Take a seat. It's time to talk about my dongle. The Fosi Audio DS1. So, what is a dongle DAC? Simply put, it's an external sound card or digital to analog converter that provides portable, high-quality decoding and amplification. The best use cases for these include reducing desk space usage, or when desk space is minimal, portability with laptops, and improving phone audio quality. To fulfill these use cases, first of all, it has to be well built. The first thing you'll notice when taking this thing out of the box is that it's an absolute unit at 37.9 grams, minus the cable. For its size, it feels incredibly robust, weighty, instilling confidence that it will survive more than a few drops over its lifetime. Edges and corners are only ever so slightly chamfered, so it doesn't feel sharp, but it plays strongly into the brutalist aesthetic with its asymmetrical raised plug hole mounds and straight lines, which helps this dongle stand out in the sea of curved, smooth aluminium and plastic alternatives. Like many other dongles, it also has two different colored sockets, which at the very least can be considered an easy visual way to distinguish between the 35mm and balanced 4.4mm sockets. The position, brightness and colors of the lights are not obnoxious, but we'll talk more about the colors later. The USB socket provides a reassuringly tight grip on the cable, which, in of itself, feels like it might be the least robust element. Perhaps I'm wrong about these twisted rope type cables, but I'm concerned about their longevity. In the end, I think you can be forgiven for believing that USB cables like this are more like consumables, akin to earpads on a headphone or tires on a car, which will eventually wear out, break, and need replacing in the future. I'm, however, more in the camp that believes cables should be built to spec for their purpose, and extra effort should be made for a cable that potentially may involve many journeys in pockets, being involved in a miniature tug-of-war between a mobile phone and a headphone cable, and also many hundreds of plugging cycles. I hope this one does last, but I'm not yet convinced. In any case, the presence of a detachable cable rather than a hardwired cable is always welcome and preferable. Also provided is a USB Type A to C adapter which has the same plastic finish as the cable connectors, but finished in black instead of grey. The volume buttons are symmetrical, making them difficult to differentiate in some situations, particularly on the go if it's in your pocket. So you may need to actively remind yourself that volume up is on the USB side and volume down is toward the audio sockets. If used with a laptop, the dongle is very likely to be oriented in the correct or intuitive direction for volume controls with volume up at the top. In any case, these buttons have a very satisfying tactile click when pressed, which is always appreciated as each click changes volume by one increment out of over 60 or so, but holding these buttons will also slide the volume up or down faster. As a final side note, the dongle does get a little warm to the touch after a while, but it never reached an uncomfortable temperature. So let's talk about the LED colors and what they mean. I found them all relatively unintuitive, so some reading of the manual is required to learn what each color indicates. Here's a list of all the colors and what they mean. Flashing red or yellow indicates the stream is in UAC 1.0 mode. All other constant LED colors are in UAC 2.0 mode, which is preferable mostly because flashing lights are annoying. For most users, with a library of MP3s and 16-bit FLAC files, get used to seeing red and yellow, as they will most likely have a sample rate of 44.1 and 48 kHz. If you have a library of 24-bit FLACs with a higher sample rate, you will likely see green and cyan, and those with DSF files with very high sample rates can expect to also see blue and purple once the DSD format decoding automatically kicks in. Finally, a blinking white light means you've reached the lowest or highest volume. So if your library contains all of these file types, it may become confusing learning what all these colors mean. Each sample rate has two modes, high and low mode. This is actually not a high or low gain mode. It is in fact a setting you should choose depending on the headphone that you plug into it. Low mode being for a low impedance headphone between 16 to 150 ohms, and high mode for headphones between 150 and 300 ohms. The DS1 will, however, not choose the mode automatically. The only automatic change is the LED color based on the format being streamed. To switch between low and high mode, you're supposed to press both buttons simultaneously, but I found that holding down any one button and pressing the other button after a short delay works better. The high and low modes are designed to lower the distortion and are optimized for those 2 ohm ranges of headphone resistance previously mentioned. I don't have the equipment to test this properly, as distortion values require much more expensive measuring tools and an extremely silent environment. But the good news is that in either mode, I could not hear any distortion, even with the incorrect mode selected for the headphone I was using at the time, including headphones well above the recommended ohm rating. Although using headphones above the recommended ohm rating is generally not recommended for any amplifier. I think in the end, the high and low modes are likely not going to be a significant or defining feature for many users. One thing users will have to take into consideration is the maximum power of the dongle can only be unleashed with the use of a balanced 4.4mm cable. The 3.5mm already provides a really good amount of power, but the balanced 4.4mm output can very easily give you hearing damage if you're not careful. The DS1 does not seem to impart any tone to the recording and remains perfectly neutral. I measured a Sennheiser HD650 seated in exactly the same position with several amps and DACs in quick succession and found that the DS1's frequency response was no different to the others. So how does this amp sound? It's an amp. It doesn't make any noise of its own, so don't worry about it. Compared with my trusty old Audio DG NFB 11.28 TXO, I was very pleasantly surprised with how well this dongle performs with all kinds of headphones and IEMs. It is strong enough to adequately drive a Hi-Fi Man HE500, even out of the 3.5mm socket, and does an equally good job of supplying power to planar IEMs like the KZ
Habibi
PR2. I couldn't detect any obvious reason to pick a more powerful amplifier over the DS1 under normal listening situations. Most of the dynamic headphones I tested also posed no challenge. I had to turn the volume up significantly higher for my AKG K501, but it was still below 50%, just to give you an idea of how much headroom this little dongle has. But of course, even at 100% volume, this dongle is nowhere near powerful enough for hard-to-drive vintages like the Pioneer SE700. The DS1 is honestly making me start to question some of my more expensive purchases, but for obvious reasons I won't be using this dongle with my hard-to-drive vintage headphones, which is already way beyond where you would normally draw the line with any dongles. No amplifier is designed to output maximum volume all day long, and of course using it on a higher volume with hungrier headphones like full-sized planars will also lower the headroom and theoretically increase distortion. So, compared to larger desktop amplifiers, it's better to stay reasonably well within its recommended specs, but most users will also not be powering their Hi-Fi Man HE6 or Pioneer SE700 with this dongle. It's also worth mentioning that there's absolutely no background hissing or audible distortion at the maximum volume. Also, aside from the obviously higher power of the 4.4mm balanced output, I didn't hear any reason to use this dongle exclusively with balanced cables. This little dongle is capable of powering most common headphones very adequately, while decoding some of the highest quality audio formats around today. Putting aside any of the design features that may come across as unintuitive or require a learning curve, in its purest form, there is nothing to strongly dislike about it. For minimalists or frequent travelers, This could very easily replace a full-sized desktop amplifier permanently. I can easily give this product a recommendation based only upon its audio quality and high power output, but I still have some reservations about the LED color choices and the USB cable. If, like me, you enjoy brutalist design and seemingly endless portable power, this is one dongle worthy of your consideration. I'll see you in the next one.